Don't look too hard at this newsstand. Okay, everybody, welcome. You are listening to the Daily AI Show live every day. Today is March 6th, 2024, and you're on for a great show. We're talking about breaking news, the hottest, bestest things happening in the world of AI over the last 6.5 days, I guess, whatever bumps up against last Wednesday, right? We do this every Wednesday, in case you're wondering, and the whole purpose is to keep you updated on what's going on in the world of AI. And I would say this week has had some interesting big announcements from, I think I would call it a sleeper. They kind of announce something and they compete really well and they sleep for a couple months. They're not as talented in their PR department. And I'm speaking, of course, with Anthropic. Because the AIs of the world, they completely see Google as a competitor. So when Google does something, they do something to steal the thunder. Anthropic, maybe OpenAI doesn't see them as much of a competitor, so I guess they don't worry about their announcements. But this is getting pretty good buzz. I'd love for you all to get your thoughts on it. But what I'm referring to is Claude 3 and the 3 different iterations of their model. So they have 3 different versions of their newest chat solution. Does anybody remember the 3 different versions? One's Haiku, one's Sonnet, and one's Opus.
Yeah, that's right.
And Opus is the most expensive one. You can't get access to that unless you get the Pro. Haiku is supposed to be the free version, which is faster, and I guess Sonnet's right in the middle. But I haven't tried all 3 to test them side by side. But what are y'all thoughts on what they've done recently?
Well, first of all, let's say that Anthropic, of course, was a spin out in effect from OpenAI. And Anthropic has, been a leader and I would say one of the most valued offerings in the large language model space with their series of Anthropic releases. What we've all been sitting around waiting for is, how does a smaller company without the level of funding of OpenAI, how does it compete with OpenAI in the long run? And we've been hearing that, ChatGPT-4, even more than a year after its release and almost 2 years since it finished its training, is always the leader. Well, no longer. Claude 3 Opus beats it. But again, when one of these models outperforms GPT-4, you can see in the small increments of increase in some of these
0.4. It's blowing it away at 0.4% better.
Well, in the one area, yeah, that's right, exactly. Some of these marginal increases that push something to the top of the leaderboard are insignificant. But look at this. GPT-4 on graduate level reasoning has a 36% score on that particular test. And Claude 3 is at 50%. That blows it away.
Right.
So in advanced reasoning, now the king of the hill is Claude 3. And so they dethroned GPT-4. But let's remember that GPT-4 ended its training in 2022. Okay, that's a long time ago. That ended its training. Now, Claude 3 probably ended its training sometime in late 2023. And so I forget what the date of the termination of its training data is. Does anyone remember? It would have been published somewhere that, its training data goes up to a certain date. But nonetheless, this is really exciting news. It shows how the refinement and maturation of large language model training is getting us closer and closer to artificial general intelligence. So at the level of reasoning of humans who are doing this reasoning. And so it's a very, very big news story. And Claude has always been, even before this Claude 3 release, it's always been one of the best at creative writing and composition. So a lot of people use Claude in favor over the alternatives, whether Gemini or OpenAI's GPT-4 line, because it's just better at certain things. Well, now it's better at the most important one, which is reasoning.
Which interesting, Andy, that we don't see this from the graphic. And for those listening on podcasts, I'm showing a graphic of the different models and how they compete with GPT-4. But they're also the Haiku. There's also a graphic that I saw online of Haiku, which is their free version, competing with GPT 3.5. And I think the margins of Claude are much bigger. Like the differences between 3.5 and Claude 3 Haiku are actually a wider gap. So I'm not sure what that means. Like their lowest model performs better than GPT's lowest model, I guess is the takeaway. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it's just this is a new generation, right? This is a new generation of training assisted by AI being applied to the training in some way, some mysterious way that we don't get to see because that's under the covers. Those are, trade secrets for each of these companies is how they conduct their training. But the training that Claude 3 got is superior to what GPT-4 got.
And what they're showing in that graphic, they are comparing apples to apples, or they're comparing GPT-4 has a 5-shot maybe, or a 4-shot, meaning examples provided. But the one with the biggest distinction is 0-shot on both sides. And so I find that interesting. Yes, it says some stuff about the reasoning, but does that also imply that they were much closer if both had some examples provided? And I think it says some things about like the core functionality about the model, but in general I think most of us also want to like have examples of what we wanted to do and can provide that. So the utility is different for me.
Very interesting. So that's Claude 3 that came out Monday, I think it was, and it's kind of making some ripples. People are, making all the claims and doing their content to say, is it a GPT-4 killer? Whatever. But I think that the real question is when it gets being used and you get API access and people start using it, how's it performing? I did notice that recently Ethan Mollick posted a Twitter post about, word for word, the instructions or explanation of the instructions that Anthropic is using for their pre-prompt, whatever you want to call it, the pre-prompt that they do. And it's, I don't know, based on what I saw recently with the leaked footage of what GPT has is their pre-prompt. I don't know the correct terminology. It is very eye-opening. Like they're much more, I'm not going to touch anything. I'm just going to try to keep you within these guardrails. It's much more true guardrail, less directional, less what's it called, alignment, which I think GPT is really constantly trying to align it with different really detailed prompts. And whereas Anthropic, because they're a constitutional AI, they're trying just to keep it within the basic bounds. What are y'all's thoughts on the differences between the model in that regard?
Well,
you want to just explain what constitutional AI means in this concept?
Yeah, and my generic understanding of constitutional AI is that instead of having an RLHF or basically when you got a response from the language model, kicking it one direction and kind of hitting it constantly with don't talk this way, don't talk about that, make sure when you reference this, don't do this. Constitutional is like, let's just give you the baseline principles to adhere to and just follow these main rules. And so the model starts with a premise, like these are your Bill of Rights of sorts of how we want you to operate, and make sure that every response goes through that lens. Whereas GPT or ChatGPT or OpenAI's method is much more correcting the responses. Am I doing that right, Andy? Is that the right?
That's right. Thank you. That's good.
Well, the other thing about the way that this comes out from Anthropic is today, or I guess last night, Amanda Askell, Askell on X, went through the revealed prompt and did a detailed breakdown of why that exists, what it's doing in the thing. And she is an AI alignment researcher at Anthropic. So not only do we have this and we have this explanation, it's just a much more I don't know that it's forward thinking, but it's just a much more upfront. It's not like they reveal all their research, but when they reveal something, they're not trying to prevent you from understanding what they did to do that, right? No, this is the prompt. This is why we wrote it this way, right? So I think it's in that context, it's really different than OpenAI or Google.
Here's something that I think is a good context for this sort of face-off between the spin-out Anthropic and OpenAI. So OpenAI started out as a sort of a non-profit, ethical AI concept, and a bunch of major players donated money to it at the inception of it, including Elon Musk.
Yeah, setting up the
Anthropic,
next story.
that's
Yeah,
right. This is
exactly.
the segue that I'm leading up to here. The Anthropic spun out. I forget the name of the CEO of Anthropic, but was at OpenAI, left along with some others to form Anthropic to create a more ethical AI company, because already inside they saw the emergence of more commercial interest, and clearly OpenAI has moved swiftly in that direction, somewhat away from this pure constitutional AI that is ethical and better for you and the world, right? So now you got
Be
Elon.
careful. Ethical is a minefield. Ethical for one is not for another. So I just
Indeed.
yeah.
So,
So,
but
but you're
that was
right.
the-
They kind of but and we'll get to this in the next story. I think is important. But you're mentioning they had to, in their mind, because their goal was AGI. They had to get more money, and in order to get more money, they had to go for profit. So, and then whereas Anthropic, it kept their original tenants. Is that kind of where you're going with it? Is that they kind of remained loyal to their initial ethos?
Yeah, if you could think of this as the dark side and the good Jedi's, like Anthropic is trying to lay claim to the Jedi line of AI development. So anyway, and thank you, Beth. Beth put up the name of the CEO of and one of the founders of Anthropic. It's
But
Dario.
this is this is actually sorry, yeah, I was gonna say this while I'm sharing the screen while we're at it. So Beth mentioned Amanda Askell put up the Claude 3 system prompt, and what I had mentioned is Ethan actually breaks down her explanation of this system
Oh,
prompt
nice.
line by line. So I can show that if you like. But what's interesting is this is it. And if you looked at the leak from OpenAI, it was very detailed. Like, don't ever give recipes. When somebody asks for it, it's just really, and don't give summaries of books, or it had some really like slapping the hand of a teenage child kind of a
Yeah,
prompting.
the laundry list of don'ts.
Exactly. Whereas this is like, hey, we just want to make sure you know who you are, what the date is, and and it's very interesting. So I think that's interesting for everybody to. What does that mean for us? I don't know. How does that going to make you change how you use it? I don't know. Because at the end of the day, you're going to hopefully go side by side and be like, you know what, GPT is better or Anthropic's better, and it's the output that we're looking for, not, then in 5 years from now, are we going to care about how it's put together as much, or are we going to say this is a better output? I don't know.
Well, they're making a play that is not just a better way to get an aligned model, but a better way to move things forward without the tension, right? So I mean, if we imagine this may be very culturally inappropriate and maybe not true, but I grew up on stories that if you took a small elephant and chained it would learn to stay within the area, right? Even when it grew big, and could get out of that area. It was now a much stronger elephant. That's what I think is what's happening, right? So OpenAI is like, you may not do any of these things, and several other of the LLMs are kind of training that way. And I think Anthropic is doing no, thank you, little elephant, please stay within this perimeter, and don't try to explore outside of it.
Exactly.
And we're still in the growing elephant season. We do not know.
So moving on to other news, I want to mention, of course, anybody can jump in with their list of things that were most interesting to you guys. I want to bring back the Elon Musk thing. And we don't talk very much about him because I think he's just making a PR play again, suing OpenAI for, again, I don't know why he's got standing, but they responded back with a very interesting post. If anybody read their response, it's a bunch of emails. And I'm a big Elon fan, but golly, Elon, why he really messed up this one by basically claiming that they were going in the wrong direction with the original source, kind of what we already talked about, or the original intent of OpenAI. And then OpenAI responded with, well, here's all the emails between you and us where you basically said, go for it, and you don't want a part of this, or you wanted the whole company for yourself and you wanted to own it. And it was just like, obvious that Elon's in the wrong. What are your all's thoughts on that?
Silence. Okay, I'll keep it short. I think this is, like you said, it's a PR play on both sides. OpenAI is, of course, publicly defending themselves because they were attacked publicly, and everybody loves to see a train wreck, right? They love to see a car accident, even though it's a terrible thing, but that's why you get all of the rubbernecking as you're passing by slowly, looking at seeing what the result is. This is also the reason why we love reality TV, is because we want to see the conflict. And if it's between billionaires or billion-dollar companies, all the more better. So I think that's just it right now. It's just a back and forth. I don't think we're actually going to see any positive movement.
It's working.
We haven't talked about this since it happened, right? Elon tweeted on March 1st, and now we've had a response at yesterday.
Yeah, well, I got one thing before you said one. It's interesting is I get like maybe 10 or 15 newsletters that are subscribed to. Every single one of them is mentioning this response from OpenAI and Elon. Like, he's staying on the top of everybody's minds. But go ahead, Beth. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, 100%. Right? Like, and I think part of that is because when there is conflict within the founders of OpenAI, that is something that people are interested in, just because OpenAI is the leader. I mean, you can debate that, but what happens at OpenAI and their leadership matters to us. Certainly, I think it matters to the world, but it definitely matters to people who are interested in AI. So Elon sued, saying breach of contract because it was formed as a nonprofit and then is no longer functioning as a nonprofit. And he wants discovery, right? And he wants everything to be released. I think the like motivation from that could easily be that Elon is currently building an LLM and trying to compete, and it would be very, very nice if OpenAI just revealed all their secrets to the world.
This is a big duh, and this is the same as last year when he did the open letter trying to say everybody should slow down their development of AI, right when he launched AI.x.ai or something. Yeah. I want to show this. This is great, Greg. Thank you for pushing this. This is like big synopsis. I know people are listening, but one of our listeners said Sam has flat out said that he's building out an investment pool for vertical integration that would essentially dominate the supply chain for all AI chips and resources. Elon is trying to build out his own AI and raise money for that. He wants to do exactly what Sam is being accused of, or he's accusing Sam of. This is him trying to slow down the competitor, raise doubts about OpenAI throughout the investor community in hopes of diverting investment to his project, and most importantly, frame the OpenAI partnership. Yeah, you're right, 100%. This kind of summarizes that story point. So since we've
you can go point by point, right? Like, his concern is that like there will be too much human AI robot interaction. Hello, Neuralink. Right? Like, literally, if you go back to his, we're going to form this because I'm concerned about these 5 points. And actually the artificial intelligence show, Paul Raitzer and Mike Kaput go through that. So like, go and when you're done, listen to ours fully and rate it on Apple, please. And then go listen to theirs.
I will say, if there's any value for the rest of us to grab from this interaction, this play that the two of them are acting out, it's becoming more aware of these specific steps, right? A lot of this stuff, you have to like sift through their actions to kind of pull out any kernels of truth or information. But I would say, like Greg succinctly put that out, was here's all the stuff that they're doing. This is and this is pretty much evidence of why they're doing it. So it's good to know that these kinds of moves are made, and what kind of thinking or future thinking that these entities have for the next.
I have a perfect another clean segue to another major story, which is so as Greg said, Sam Altman says that he wants to raise billions of dollars in order to develop chips, right? Now, what that does is it challenges the leader in the chip space, which is NVIDIA. Well, NVIDIA this week made a change to their license agreement for using CUDA software, which is the software that lets AI software run well on GPUs like NVIDIA's GPUs that were originally designed for games. Right. Mm-hmm. So graphic processing units is what the GPU stands for. Well, it turns out that this CUDA software layer is essential to applying Python and other like TensorFlow and other AI languages to a GPU. Well, they just changed their license agreement so that companies can't use that software on other chips. Okay,
so you can't you can use the shovel, but you can't use the shoveling method on a different shovel. You can only shovel the way you need to shovel with our shovel.
That's a great analogy. I love that, Jimmy.
But isn't that going to be like Microsoft Chrome? Like, doesn't that start to get into problems that big tech companies have had already?
Well,
in the past, not AI, right? Like,
well, it specifically silos chip manufacturing and the software that is used
that allows
for
it to
the
be
computational part, the compute to those manufacturers. So you're either using NVIDIA chips, or you're using TPUs from Google, or you're using Microsoft's chips, those kinds of things.
Yeah. So so now you get a picture of all of these major players with astounding levels of investment, billions of dollars of investment, all racing to build the ecosystem that works for them. And just in a show yesterday, I think I made the point that there's specialization of software plus hardware combinations. We see it in the company Groq, GROQ, that built an LPU, a language processing unit that's specific to the effect of running large language models. So that chip with that large language model goes orders of magnitudes faster than running a GPU, the very best GPUs from NVIDIA, using large language model code. So there's a big space race going on right now. And so that's my segue on that one. Let me just toss out another one, which is now we're talking about the emergence of assistants and embodied assistants in the form of robots. Okay, so that's going to happen in this enormous space race. And Figure, the company that makes the most humanoid of the robots, raised $675 million to build their own AI models expressly for use within humanoid robots.
Who's this?
$175 million. That is, we used to think about.
Who did that? Who did that?
Figure.
Oh, Figure. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah.
And OpenAI is a major partner as part of that. Part of that deal.
For those who don't know,
Exciting
that's
news.
a big leap.
Exciting news. Follow the money. Follow the money.
Yeah.
That's true.
I want to go backwards and do a different segue, though.
If you've looked at the robot videos, Figure's robot is the one that made coffee, and Elon's robot is the one that folded a shirt. Right? They both walk like they have diapers.
Okay, so I want to do a segue away from a different topic that Andy just said, but he jumped different segue. I want to take a different exit, and he mentioned Groq. The Groq chip is an inference chip, an LMU that basically it really is going to make the 25 times faster, up to 25 times faster at responding to a user query. Right. So that chip is going to be big. But if you partner that with this new paper from Microsoft, is it Microsoft? Let me remember my thing here. It is from Microsoft. So they've decided, so it's something called BitNet 1.58. The generic, I guess, takeaway from this paper is that instead of just doing zeros and ones, they're doing -1, 0, and 1. Now, what that basically means is that, again, 25 to 30% faster, because they're able to make the LLMs smaller. So the Grok chip is on inference. So that's the output. But now with this 1-bit LLMs, they're going to be able to make language models, train them on data sets that are much smaller because of the variables that, and again, I'm not really explaining it very well, but what I like about this tech is that it's going to, again, we're pushing more and more toward a new scaling law. It actually says it here in the paper, in the abstract. This is more profoundly, it's defining a new scaling law, which basically means that we're going to be able to get further faster with less space, which means we're going to be on phones, these language models. So big news. I think it's a huge advancement recently. I do
have a couple of stories that will segue off of that as well.
Good.
A really quick one is that the JEDEC, don't ask me what that represents, but they're the governing organization over establishing the standards for GDDR7, GDDR7, and that's essentially the new memory output. So just, it's another hardware expansion, and this is going to be the fastest memory, right? So, but the key thing here is it's not just an incremental jump that we've seen from, memory of 3 to 4 to 5. This is a huge jump from 6 to 7, where it's doubling the output, right? So the doubling the bandwidth. So that's going to lead to more hardware advancements. So you just need less memory to provide the same performance, right? So that, again, you can have it on smaller hardware. And then a company called Multiverse, they're doing something called quantum software. So it's tied to quantum computing and things like that. But the main takeaway is that their software that they're developing, it's targeting so I was reading this article on TechCrunch. They want to target LLMs with their software, and their software, if you boil it down, they basically say it will compress LLMs by 80%. So just like you were talking about that paper. So we're seeing these even super large LLMs that are going to be compressed to such a size that you will see on smaller and smaller hardware.
Which is interesting is, I'm not sure if anybody's have been in healthcare before, but I had a doctor friend of mine that, he'd read these papers on scientific journals, and he said, this is great tech, but we won't see it for 7 years. Like that was the turnaround time of when you see something, an innovation in healthcare, in the science, it was many years before you see it in the real world. Well, these papers that we're reading on a regular basis that are popping up with all these cool things, it's like, I think they're going like 6 months. I think that they're able to integrate this tech faster, and you don't hear about it. You just all of a sudden hear, oh, wow, Grok is better, or ChatGPT is better, or Microsoft is really, and I think they're just incorporating a lot of these new techs that we're talking about and able to build models faster and better. But yeah, so I know maybe some other people have some interesting things, but I want to just throw out these topics, and if anybody wants to jump on them, I really would like to get everybody's opinions. Did anybody hear about AI worms? Number one.
Oh, a little bit, yeah.
Okay. Number two, did anybody hear about Emo, which is the Emote Portrait Live, which is really cool? Anybody hear about Pi, and that you can now use it in Messenger and iMessage? So Pi.ai, you can actually just chat with it in your messaging app, which is
they also have a desktop app.
Yep.
So it's no longer have to be just
in the browser. Okay, that's cool. And the last one, I'll see if, and we didn't talk about Klarna. Did we talk about Klarna already?
We talked about Klarna in a previous show.
Previous podcast. Okay, so anybody want to talk about AI worms or Emo or
is AI worms the that it can create malware?
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and bring up this. Well, maybe Jimmy or or Andy can chime in, but I'll bring up this thing so you can see it, this article about it. But basically, they were able to, when you have an AI, maybe it's the Google's AI that is able to read your emails. Okay, it has been able to inject a worm that actually pulls. The hackers be able to eject a worm that able to pull your data off of your system by allowing it access to your emails. I'm not explaining it well, obviously, but I wasn't sure if anybody had heard about that.
Oh, that's a problem.
Can you explain?
Yeah.
that?
Well, I mean,
I didn't
it's
think
just a new twist on what has been done in the past. You know, that's essentially a phishing attack.
But instead of like the virus being inside your company's network, it's in the neural network potentially. Like that just seems like
I don't know if
large
it's the
scale.
same article, but I read one where the main concern was that the
Here it is. I'll
the
share it.
software could write it what it needed to then attack your system internally. So it wouldn't exist until it gained access, and that was one of the major concerns of it.
It created a
Okay,
self-replicating prompt that
Yeah.
overwhelmed the client, causing it to continually forward messages. It can then instruct the AI models, powering it to retrieve data. Which, again, it's
Oh
just
yeah, this is just a virus. It's just written by AI.
yeah,
right?
exactly. Well,
Yeah.
the AI that you gave it access to, they were able to tweak it, which very interesting.
It goes to it's easier and faster now. That's what it kind of wraps into. The bad actors are still doing the
seems
same
like
thing
it
with a little
requires that
twist.
you be using the AI to generate emails, and it then put that worm payload in the email.
That it generates, yeah.
Yeah. So
So we are definitely moving toward Battlestar Galactica territory, and yeah.
I have one more that I want to share here, which is again in the sort of the area of following the money. Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z, invested $80 million in a Series A for Ideogram. Now, we've talked about Ideogram last year. Why? Because Ideogram came out as an image generator that could handle text better. So if you see even on our thumbnails, like today, what Robert said, don't look closely at this newsstand because it's news zapers, right? Instead of newspapers. DALL-E 3 doesn't really handle the text implantation, if you will, into the image very well. Well, Ideogram did it beautifully. So they had this essential ability. Well, an $80 million Series A is, like among Series A's, that's, in history, that's a very, very large Series A. And the CEO of that company, Ideogram, is named Mohamed Nourouzi. He was 7 years at Google Brain as a research scientist. And the positioning of this product, Ideogram, which everybody should go check out, it's really very good. There's some favorites out there in image generation, like some people like Leonardo. Midjourney, of course, is like a major player out there. But Ideogram is designed to be a framework and a toolkit for human creativity, and as many image generators claim to be, but they're trying to build out a much bigger set of creative enhancement tools for humans, and they just got a pile of money to do that.
And they just released an update. I don't know what number update it is. I thought it was 2.0, but that's not pulling anything up.
Yeah, I think it's 1.0. I mean, they finally came out with their official 1.0 version.
And the word on the Twitter streets is that it follows instructions much better. So you could say, I want a little boy with a blue ball in their right hand, a yellow ball in their left hand, looking at a table with a larger pink ball, right? Like just really super detailed. Or I want 4 pictures showing the progression of seasons, that kind of stuff. And really specific, like it can follow your instructions is my point.
So on that note, I want to end the show, but I want to say that I love the idea of creative, because I think like there's so many competitors out there that we're going to get to a point where, because you're all trying to be the best, we're going to have some great solutions by year end. It's going to be fun. So I'm excited about seeing what we have at our disposal and what's happening in content, what the new version of content. But thank everybody for listening. Like, subscribe, comment, as Beth likes to say. We'll see you tomorrow, same bat time, same bat channel. And
The
next week
future
for-
of work. So, you know,
Yeah.
a totally inconsequential show. Come, tell your friends.
All right.
you know,
If you don't want to
we're omens and shamans, but we can tell you the future.
Well,